Looking down on the picturesque Toulon coastline, it's easy to understand why some of the world's best rugby players are attracted to play here. But perhaps for the most famous of them all, the decision was just the latest stage in a life that has brought him public adulation, but also private despair. Jonny Wilkinson has called time on his international career, but he remains a formidable force for Toulon. His metronomic kicking and his total commitment to his work are taken for granted. But the freedom he enjoys off the field here has had a beneficial effect on his game. Toulon are riding high in the French league, currently third, and against Castres at the weekend, he once again played a major part in their 25-all draw. Wilkinson's World Cup winning drop goal in 2003 changed his life forever. A superstar was created. But behind the confident public facade was a young man struggling to cope with celebrity.
The media thing kind of escalated me to a situation where I felt massively as though I was basically cheating everyone. You know, I became someone that was getting celebrated everywhere, and I just felt massively overinflated. I felt it was hugely overinflated, everything, and I felt that, you know, I felt terrible for people that didn't get what they deserve. I felt terrible for people that didn't have what I had. I felt terrible when people celebrated me before events. I felt terrible when people celebrated me after events, and I just found it hugely challenging, you know, because I wanted to just get back under the radar and just enjoy what I was doing. But I felt that people, yeah, maybe that the whole thing allowed people to lose sight of the huge effort that went from the team and the huge effort that went from the coach and everything, and it went a bit on me. But you know, so I guess that's been balanced out by some of the criticism that's come the other way.
The events of that October night in 2003 were a world away from the small English town of Farnham where he was brought up. But even as a child, he set himself some unrealistic targets.
Playing international rugby, the pressure I felt then was pretty much exactly the same to what I felt playing an under-8s game, you know, for Farnham. I always felt if I didn't meet that kind of pressure as such, or if I didn't meet those expectations or come through in the challenge, that there was something very, very serious as a result of that. You know, the consequences were very serious. Obviously, they weren't. You were 7 or 8 years old playing rugby. If you lost, you lost, whatever. But to me, it just seemed way, way more than that. Rugby was and has been, for me, my passion and what I was born to do, I feel, at this age, and therefore it was what I took most seriously. And I think I looked at it as literally life and death.
As a teenager, he was introduced to a man who had become much more to him than a mere kicking coach.
That moment when I met Dave Allred was an enormous turning point in my career. Up until then, I was someone that practiced hard for hours and hours, but I never really understood that it was possible to assume control over what happened to things. Yeah, there was this element to me of a huge worry about not getting things right. And meeting Dave gave me that sense of control, of kind of influence over what actually happened, by understanding that by good technique and looking at what the guy could do himself, it was possible to start directing your own life and actually saying, well, you don't need to have a bad day if you don't want one, and if you're prepared to work for it. And it kind of just turned me from being someone that lacked that ultimate confidence to someone that realised, you know what, if I really want this, I can have it.
It was a philosophy that would guide Wilkinson and England to World Cup glory. But he does question what his life would have been like without rugby.
I've sort of been interested at times to think and to know what would have happened were it not to have gone down the route it has. I would like to have seen what had happened otherwise. You know, I didn't go to university, I didn't get that group of friends outside of rugby, and I've driven myself along, and I've loved every second of it. But at the same time, there's been moments where I've thought, I wonder, would I have grown up a bit more? Would I have matured a bit differently? Would I have experienced more or less? You know, you never know. What I do know is that I'm privileged to have been through what I've been through. But at the same time, you know, it's been interesting. There's been a lot of moments where I've wondered, what am I really doing with myself, you know, in terms of, you know, am I really enjoying it, or am I doing this for myself or for others? And I think that ultimately the problem with that is the media side of things, you know.
But Wilkinson's obsession for perfection came at a cost. He's been brave enough to reveal he sought professional help to cope with the turmoil and panic attacks that eventually led to depression.
It's part of who I am, and it's part of my rugby performances. You know, it's tied in with all that rugby. It's tied in with all the bits and of the nerves and the anxiety beforehand, but also with the identity and the struggle with the privacy. All that stuff is tied in with it, and it was really for me an opportunity to try and make people aware, if that was necessary in any way, that rugby is not just about what you see on the TV or on the field. To understand that it's not all plain sailing. It's not, yes, I'm playing, oh damn, I'm not. It's not, oh, that went well, we won, or that went badly, we lost. It's emotional. It's hugely emotional. And for me, growing up the way I did, losing everything at some point through the injuries, just took something away that I didn't realise was in place. You know, the values I put on myself with having to, trying to be so perfect, get things right the whole time, and living this thing as a rugby player and tying myself in with that one identity. When it all went, I kind of had nothing left, and it affects everyone in a different way, and it affected me in a way that I lost the key ingredients of who I am, the motivation, everything, and it was a scary time.
Earlier in the show, Jonny Wilkinson told us of his struggle to cope with the attention following England's 2003 World Cup success. But last year's tournament proved to be a sad end for a player who has served his country with such distinction.
I think it was just a case of you get a few things not quite right, and you realise then that you're messing around at a level of rugby which is hugely unforgiving. There are no room for errors and for mistakes and for being slightly off the ball and those sort of things. You get punished, and that was the situation. People are in positions now where they're earning good money and privileged lifestyles, and you're representing your country, and that doesn't stop when you take your boots off. You know, it follows you around, and it's not unfortunate, but it's part of the job, and it needs to be respected. I think one of the difficult situations at that time for me is that I hadn't played for several years through that 2003-2007 period. I didn't play at all. And what happened was that generation, in amongst all those injury years, changed twice actually, and therefore there were guys in there who were kind of, I'd never really played against because they were too young. I'd never really played, definitely never played with, who were kind of being told to respect me for what I represented, but that didn't work for me. But I felt also that I didn't know if what I was going to say was going to help the whole team, and that therefore is a dangerous thing to get involved in. I needed to make sure that what I was saying was going to help the team go forward, and it was a difficult moment for me in terms of I was trying to fit in as much as they were, and you know that took time. And for me, it took time sitting there and understanding people. I needed to get to know the team before we could find out what we all wanted.
So now he'll only be seen in the black shirt of Toulon. But how does he view his future, on and off the pitch?
I love being here. It's given me a new stretch of life. It's given me a new ability to find the enjoyment of what I'm doing. It's broadened my lifestyle. It's allowed me to meet fabulous people, play in a beautiful area, learn a new culture, be in front of incredible supporters, incredible atmospheres, and just love rugby for what it is. So my future here playing-wise is definitely, unfortunately, in terms of after that, I think it's a decision to be made, and it's going to be very difficult to carry on life after rugby in France. But if I'm doing my very best to have a link with France in everything I do, I think. But at the moment, it's rugby, and it's all about Toulon.
His life has been one of extreme highs and depressing lows. So what's his advice to those youngsters beginning their own rugby adventure?
Enjoy every moment of what you do. What you put into it, you will get back. But understand that rugby, like life, is a team game. Respect your teammates, respect the opposition, because you're all on the same side ultimately, and strive to get your best. Probably the best thing that I ever learned was that if you want to get the best out of yourself, you're best off just trying to get the best out of everyone else around you, and that you'll find that gets you to where you want to be.